Mother hens have been hatching chicks for thousands of years, so they ought to know a thing or two about it, eh? I have been hatching chicks for about 10 years, and I thought I knew a bit about it too, but most of my hatching has been done using an incubator, where I have control of a lot of the variables. Only a few times have I used a broody hen to hatch and raise chicks. But recently I had a hen go broody just at the time when I had some fertile eggs that I wanted to hatch, and here are a few of the things she taught me. Her name is Kiko, which means blue, but we call her Kiko for short. All her life she's had a tendency to be broody. In fact, she went broody for the first time when she was only 7 months old and had only been laying for 2 months. I didn't have fertile eggs for her and had never let her stay broody for long. Here are a couple of videos about how to discourage broodiness. So I really didn't know whether Kiko would stay sitting for the whole 21 days. Not all hens will stay the course, but Kiko showed me if a hen keeps telling you she wants to be broody, she's probably good at it. Kiko chose her own maternity unit. There's a beautiful nest box inside my hen house, which all the hens used to use, but recently Kiko had started to lay in the little house that I had used for growing chicks before they integrated into the main hen house. And when she went broody, this was where she decided to sit. Kiko knew a thing or two about the ideal maternity unit. Because it was separate from the nest box in which the other hens were laying, I had no trouble knowing which were Kiko's eggs and which were fresh eggs to collect for our breakfast. And Kiko's eggs were never in danger of being kicked around or broken by other hens as they laid. It was also a good spot because it was shaded, warm and protected from the weather, well ventilated and of course free from mites. I didn't provide any special food or water containers for Kiko. She wasn't fenced off from the rest of the flock, and she continued to eat and drink from the usual feeder and waterers. This encouraged her to get up and out of the nest to eat and drink. If you provide food and water within reach of the hen as she sits, she's likely to poop in the nest and contaminate the eggs, which can kill the developing chicks. The other hens seemed to respect Kiko in her maternity unit. In fact, Pantoufla often quietly kept her company on her 21-day vigil. Kiko got up to eat, drink, poop, have a stretch, and generally mingle with the flock. As far as I know, she did this once a day, every day, except for one cool rainy day when I think she stayed in the nest all day. She always got up during the warmest part of the day, and it was away from the nest between 15 and 45 minutes. This is typical, and on a warm day the eggs snuggled up in the warm straw are not going to cool significantly while she's away from the nest for that long. On the last day she didn't get up at all, and I knew it must be close to hatching time. During the incubation, the developing chicks can hear the sounds made by the mother hen. Once the chick inside the shell breaks into the air bubble, the chick begins to breathe air and it can make little peeping sounds, and this signals to the hen that the chick will soon be hatching out. This was the hardest time for me because I didn't know what was happening. Were any chicks hatching, or had they stopped developing and died? Was Kiko squashing them or killing them? Just because a hen is a good broody, sitting reliably on the eggs, it doesn't mean that she will also be a good mother. Some broody hens, including one that I had, can love those eggs so much that they kill the chicks when they break out. But Kiko wasn't one of those murderous mothers. A day later, and I got my first view of her first adorable new baby chick. I also removed the empty egg shells for her. Now was the time when my contributions to this project began to show their worth. The box Kiko had chosen for her nest is about 12 inches off the ground, which keeps it dry. There's a ramp down to ground level, which is fine for slightly older chicks, but would have been dangerous for tiny baby chicks. Before the eggs hatched, I had made Kiko a large cardboard tray with a 6-inch high wall that was easy enough for her to step over, but would keep the straw confined. This kept the chicks confined too, while they developed their strength and mobility. Once the chicks hatched, I put down dishes of food and water for them. Dishes for baby chicks can be as simple as a bottle cap, but with a full-grown hen in the box, I needed to use heavier dishes. Usually I feed newly hatched chicks with dry chick crumble, with their water in a separate dish. But Kiko scratched the straw about so vigorously that the water dishes got covered in straw, which soaked up all the water. So I started the chicks on a wet mash of chick crumble mixed with water, so they wouldn't be in danger of dehydration. In fact, I didn't see a chick drinking out of the water dish until they were about 3 days old. During the day, I removed most of the straw to make it easier for the baby chicks to walk around the box and to get to the food and water. And I replaced the straw at night to keep everybody cosily snuggled in. But Kiko had more lessons for me. They were only about 7 days old when one day, while Kiko was out having a meal and a stretch, I realised that at least one of the chicks had now got big enough to climb over that 6-inch wall and out of the box and down to the ground. Kiko seemed happy just to let him wander around down on the ground in the chicken run. As soon as they were down on the ground, Kiko started offering them titbits to eat, bits of leafy vegetables and tiny, almost invisible bugs and seeds. Chickens can digest commercial chicken feed just using their muscular gizzard, but to digest other food, they need insoluble grit in their gizzard to grind the food into digestible particles. Because of this, I needed to add some very fine, insoluble grit to the run. I don't usually need to consider this with such tiny chicks because they're usually solely on chick crumble, but Kiko had them eating a varied diet much earlier than I would. Once the chicks were out and about, I also had to make sure the whole chicken run was safe for babies. Fortunately, the waterer that I had in the chicken run has a shallow dish, so even if a chick stood in it, the chick wouldn't be in danger of drowning. Baby chicks can drown or die of hypothermia very quickly if they fall into quite shallow water and can't get out. I added an extra ramp and a step to make it easier for the tiny chicks to get back up and into the box, but I was nervous that they would not be able to make it, so I picked them up and put them back into their box when I thought it was time they returned. This continued for 3 days, with the chicks spending most of the day happily roaming around the chicken run, then me putting them back into their box in the late afternoon. When the chicks were 10 days old, come nightfall, I hadn't put them back, and the chicks were squeaking that they were cold and ready for sleep. Kiko just started to snuggle down on the ground with them, but I was not happy with that solution. A dry nest box was a much better place for baby chicks than exposed on the cold ground, even with Mama Hen for warmth. So I used some mealworms to tempt Kiko into the box, and the chicks eventually followed her up the ramp all by themselves. Yay, well done, little chicks. The next afternoon I wasn't quite so successful with the mealworms, and I ended up with Kiko, chicks and mealworms scattered all around the chicken run. But at about 7 o'clock, Kiko had had enough, and she shepherded the chicks back into the box for the night. And so Kiko learned about how to be a good mother, while the chicks learned how to be chickens. It wasn't long before Kiko was taking the chicks out of the enclosed run and into the confined range area, where we all had more lessons to learn. I had to learn that a small chick could get between the bars of this gate and get lost, while Kiko couldn't get through to rescue it and lead it back. So that time I rescued the chick. Luckily, I was home and heard the chick and Kiko calling for help. Then I put some extra netting on the gate. This method of allowing a hen to raise her chicks while mixed in with the main flock is called barn style. I was surprised how tolerant the other hens were of the baby chicks with Kiko around to defend them. The chicks even got away with grabbing the mealworm treats in front of the hens. At least until one chick at about 3 weeks old tried to grab a mealworm from a hen, and the hen gave the chick a peck to say it was time that chick learned some manners. The chicks were always very keen to be up on the main feeder platform and daytime perch, and of course they soon learned that if Kiko was eating from the feeder, they could sneak some pellets too. This was a worry because I had layer pellets in that feeder, and the amount of calcium in layer pellets is far too high for chickens that are not laying. Excess calcium can lead to kidney damage that might not show up until weeks or months later when the chicken suddenly dies of kidney failure. So I changed the layer pellets for pullet grower pellets, that have pretty much the same nutrition except for much less calcium, and made sure the laying hens got enough calcium by providing shell grit in a separate dish for them to help themselves. I worried that the feeder itself would be a danger while the chicks were not heavy enough to keep it open, but they never came to any harm. By the time the chicks were about 5 weeks old, they were heavy enough to make it work by themselves, and I never had to teach them about it using the usual trainer catches. They just learned about it by watching. And so this experience has taught us all a lot. Kiko did well in her first attempt at motherhood. The chicks matured physically and mentally very quickly, and I had lots of fun watching the whole process. The chicks are now a couple of months old, and Kiko still seems to love having her own little flock. It's autumn here now, but come next spring, I bet Kiko will want to do it all again. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Bye for now. See you next time.